Hey, Shalom Israel, Most High Christ bless, Most High Christ bless. Officer Abraham here in IUIC Raleigh. So just to get started, what I'm doing here, what this class is my thumbnail guy didn't have my thumbnail ready. I appreciate you, my brother. He's over here. I know you can't see him, but I love him. So this is a continuation. I promised, I think, on the last class, who will be the next global superpower. I may have said it on there. Or one of the other classes, I said I was going to continue on with my series, Biblical Game of Thrones. So from here going forward until I get done with it, let's continue on with it. So,
yes, sir.
Yeah, buddy. So we about to go ahead through it. And remember, the point of this class, real quick, give me Job chapter 8, verse 8. Let me show you what the point of this class and the series is for. Shout out also to Captain Emmanuel. I seen him going through Kings and Chronicles and whatnot. Fire angle. Mine's a slightly different angle, but it's still more into the history. And I have books and co-signers to go along with it. So we about to go ahead and get it in, y'all. It's going to be a long series, but we going to get it in.
Let's go.
I'll even warn you about this. Before most of the series, I'll be honest with you, is going to take place during the time of Saul all the way through Solomon. That's most of the series. Because in between there, we're going to go through the book of Proverbs, all of it, 1 to 31, and the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1 to 12, and then jump forward from there. So it's going to be lengthy, but y'all stick with me. All right. Job 8 and 8, read that for me real quick.
The book of Job, chapter 8 and verse 8.
Come on.
Bring it out. For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age.
So it says, inquire, I pray thee, of the former age. Go ahead.
And prepare thyself to the search of their fathers.
Real quick, hold that. Go to Hebrews 10, 32 and 33.
The book of Hebrews, chapter 10 and verse 30.
32.
32.
Uh-huh.
But call to remembrance the former days.
So call to remembrance the former days. Go ahead.
In which, after you were illuminated.
And which after you were illuminated. Because when you remember the former times, that's when your eyes are enlightened. You're illuminated, understanding, wisdom. Go ahead.
Ye endured a great fight of afflictions.
So you're able to endure a great fight of affliction by remembering your former days, your past. Go ahead.
Partly while you were made a gazing stock, both by reproaches and afflictions.
So now jump back to Job.
The book of Job, chapter 8 and verse 8.
Come on.
For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age.
Go ahead.
And prepare thyself to the search of their fathers.
And prepare yourself to the search of their fathers. Hold that again. Go to Deuteronomy 4:32.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 4 and verse 32. For ask now of the days that were past, which were before thee, since the day that God created man upon the earth.
Go ahead.
And ask from the one side of the heaven unto the other,
Read.
whether there had been any such thing as this great thing is, or had heard like it.
Right, or have been heard like it. So the point of it is to make sure that you examine the past, not just read it, but then try to get yourself inside the reading and see what kind of spirit the men or the women rolled in. So that way you can dodge whatever issues might be within you or maybe present itself to you. One more scripture before I get my first image. Have the link ready, by the way, the playlist. Go to Sirach chapter 7:36, I think it is.
The book of Sirach, chapter 7 and verse 36. Whatsoever thou takest in thine hand.
So whatever you take in hand, whatever is presented to you, go ahead.
Remember the end.
Remember the latter end of that thing. So, for example, being an Israelite, knowing who you are, you have to know what the end result that you're reaching for in order to properly make the right steps today, right now. But you also have to remember the past so you can be enlightened to be able to know what the end is, because the history repeats itself. So read it from the top again.
Whatsoever thou takest in hand, remember the end.
Remember the end.
And thou shalt never do amiss.
And you'll never do wrong. But you have to know what the past was to be able to rightly move in the present, and you have to know what the future is in order to get to the end goal, the milestone, the achievement, the accolade. So, that being said, we just wanted to have a little remembrance of that. I have the link. Show them the playlist real quick. All right, so on the IUIC Raleigh channel, that was the 2 classes that I had did. One was called Biblical Game of Thrones, the Prelude, Take Me Off. Biblical Game of Thrones, the prelude, right? So that was the first part, going into what we'll be going over, the characters that we'll be going over, right? And then the other one was from theocracy to monarchy. Now, on the one we did on the prelude, that one is going to come up once I get done with Solomon. So I kind of jumped ahead only to give you a taste of what we're going to be touching on. To go back over what we was dealing with from theocracy to monarchy, this is what we're going to do. I want you to pick up from there. Go to Nelson's complete book. Go to that. This is more or less where we had left off at. Nelson's complete book of Bible maps and charts. Good book, recommended by Deacon Ithan. Has a lot of good stuff in it. Recommend get it. It's very cheap, like no more than $6, $7. Amazon, boom. Good study tool, excellent study tool. All right, let's go inside the book. So you go to my PowerPoint, and I believe it's the first image, I want to say. Yeah, I think it's the first image. Well, no, it's the third image. Saul, yes. All right, let's get rolling. We have a lot of reading to do today, y'all, so stick with me. I'm going to try to reenact some of it, but go ahead.
Saul, the story of Saul, one of the saddest in the Old Testament,
right,
is one of good beginnings, but concludes in abject failure.
Yeah, right. It concludes in abject failure, which is what we're getting on, because that's the title. The title of the class, I didn't mention it, is Chapter 2, Through Jealousy Enters the King. That's the name of this one. That's Chapter 2. Through jealousy enters the king. Right. So it started off good, but then it ended in abject failure, right? All right, go ahead.
Anointed by the prophet Samuel,
right,
as God's response to Israel's request for a king.
Go ahead.
Saul enjoyed initial success in his military efforts,
right,
but a victory over the Philistines was darkened by his presuming to offer a sacrifice to God in Samuel's absence.
So now these are scriptures that we're going to touch on in a second, right? It has 1 Samuel 10 right there. It has 11, which we touched on the theocracy and monarchy. That's what we ended off on when he had beat the Ammonites. And 13, that chapter right there is important. We're going to get to that, but go ahead, read on.
For this transgression, Samuel warned Saul that his kingdom would not continue.
Right.
Saul's failure to destroy all of Amalek.
And that was his second big failure, but go ahead.
In direct disobedience of God's command.
Right. He was hard-headed as hell. Saul was hard-headed. Benjamin, go ahead.
Resulted in God sending Samuel to anoint the shepherd boy David as Saul's successor.
Go ahead.
Rejected by God, tormented by evil spirits.
Tormented by evil spirits. Evil spirits. That's what we got to look at. When we read in this history, look at what Saul dealt with and how he dealt with it. Go ahead.
And frightened by the success of David, Saul slowly descended into madness as he repeatedly sought to kill David.
And failed every time. Go ahead.
Saul's military situation worsened, and his desperation, Saul even sought to consult the spirit of Samuel through a medium.
Right, through a witch. Go ahead.
The next day, Saul went out to do battle with the Philistines, and having been severely wounded, took his own life.
Right, he took his own life. Not now. I want to say this. It says he took his own life, which is true. He didn't get killed by the Edomite dog, whatever. Right. He didn't get killed by him, right? Because sometimes I've heard at least when we read this history, be like, oh, the Edomite killed him, and that's why the Edomite got killed by David later. Saul got killed from his own life. He took himself, right? We're gonna get into that in a second. Next page. Saul's military campaigns. Enlarge it for me a little bit if you can. Is it possible? I know it's a PowerPoint. I don't know if it's not the same as just sending you the image.
Saul's military campaigns.
Go ahead.
As the first king of the United Kingdom of Israel, Saul's major task was to subdue the nation's enemies. At first, he won several decisive battles.
Right.
But his campaigns bogged down when he turned his attention to David.
So his campaign started to lessen in its effectiveness once he turned his attention to David. Because he started to get, hence the term, jealous. Through jealousy entered the king. Right? Okay, go ahead.
Attempting to wipe out what he perceived as a threat to his power.
As a threat to his power. Go ahead.
Saul and his sons were eventually killed by the Philistines.
So I want you to notice his military campaign started to lessen when he started to put his attention towards his own brother. He instead didn't He didn't focus on the work of the Lord by doing what the Lord told him to do. He instead focused his attention to his brother, and and he forgot all about his position towards the Lord. That's why his rulership started to fall downward. He was hard-headed, had pride, had hatred, and then he got replaced.
Bring it out.
Something to notice. Something to notice. Give me the next image. Now, this is from a book called Ultimate Bible Atlas. It was a revised and expanded edition. Show me real quick. So this is how it looked. Probably won't focus. Ultimate Bible Atlas. All right. So that's where that one comes from. Now, give me that. Under Saul, we're gonna come back to this later, y'all. But we're gonna go to Saul right here. Go ahead.
Saul. Samuel was provoked, but God commanded him to give the people what they asked for.
Right.
A king of their desire. Saul, son of Cush.
Son of Kish.
A wealthy Benjamite. A tall, handsome, and humble man.
So now it says a wealthy Benjamite, a tall, handsome, and humble man. But it said also that what they asked for is something that they had asked for. Real quick, go to 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 1. 1 Samuel 8 and 1. We're going to read down to 5.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 8 and verse 1.
Go ahead.
And it came to pass, when Samuel was old, that he made his sons judge over Israel.
Right, he made his sons judges over Israel. So just like how a king, right, has his sons as princes, they had affairs over each part of the kingdom. Right. And so it was like, all right, this son is going to be have the affairs over the husbandry, the economics of the kingdom. This one will be over the affairs of war. This one will be the master of coin or the finances and so on and so forth. He had set his sons over the affairs of the kingdom. That's what he did, right? Biblical Game of Thrones now. He's setting everything up. He's setting up his government, his cabinet. Go ahead.
Now the name of the firstborn was Joel, and the name of the second, Abiah.
Right.
They were judges in Beersheba.
Go ahead.
And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre.
All right, but turned aside after filthy lucre. So they try to look at how they gain advantage over money. So that's something to be mindful of. Because, real quick, go to, I want to say it's Ephesians. The root of all evil. That's what I'm looking for. I didn't write this one down. I probably should have, but it's okay. The root of all evil. Is it Ephesians or is it Timothy? I'm shooting from the hip. I don't remember.
The book of 1 Timothy, chapter 6 and verse 10.
Go ahead.
For the love of money is the root of all evil.
It says for the love of money. Not saying that money is bad. Money is good. It could be a defense. But the love of that, putting that first, is the root of what?
Of all evil.
Go ahead.
Which while some coveted after. Like it said, the sons of Saul, one of the sons of Saul, went after filthy lucre. Go ahead. They have erred from the faith.
They erred from the faith, or what they were supposed to go after. Because the kings were supposed to keep by them the law. They were supposed to know how to deal with the brother. But if they go after filthy lucre, then they'll start to deal with the people wrong. Right. But they transferred some of that spirit. Well, we're going to get into it. That comes from their daddy, Saul. Watch, we're going to get to it. Go ahead.
And pierced themselves through with many sorrows.
So remember that, right? That's why Christ had the example. He says, this gospel ain't supposed to be with filthy lucre. So go ahead. We're going to go back. 1 Samuel chapter 8. They had got that spirit from their dad. It doesn't say it there, but when we read later, you're going to see where he got it from. Watch.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 8 and verse 3. And his sons walked not in his ways.
So his sons walked not in his ways. Go ahead.
But turned aside after lucre and took bribes.
And
perverted judgment.
Saul did that also, but go ahead.
Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together. And they came to Samuel unto Ramah.
Read.
And said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways.
So let me make a correction. This is Samuel's sons. I said Saul the whole time, even though, because Saul had Jonathan. All right, so let me correct all of that. This is Samuel's sons that actually was going over here, and they went after filthy lucre. But the precept over in, what was that, 1 Timothy 6 and 10? Yes, sir. That still stands in regards to that. Samuel's sons, Jonathan, then he had another one. So anyways, let me correct all of that. But go ahead.
And said unto them, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations.
Right, now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. Yeah, okay, I see why I did, because on the top right here it says, instead of me looking at my notes, I'm seeing where it says Saul here. I don't know why it says that there. But that's Samuel's sons. Okay, so excuse me there. Right? Go back to the image. All right, so now we're going back to Saul. So that was Samuel's sons. Samuel was a judge over the people, and his sons were put up in place so they could be have affairs over the kingdom, right? Just like how I said earlier, master of coin, so on and so forth, they was doing that. And so they was like, yeah, we don't want to go after this, after the theocratic way of how to do it. We're having God as our king and our Lord. Let's have an actual king like the other nations. So then comes in the first king, Saul. Read on.
A tall, handsome, and humble man.
Go ahead.
Saul did not seek power and accepted it reluctantly.
Go ahead.
But once in command, Saul demonstrated poor judgment and an ultimately fatal lack of spiritual discernment.
Ultimately, look at that wordage. Read that again.
An ultimately fatal lack of spiritual discernment.
An ultimately fatal lack of spiritual discernment. Him not being able to discern a spirit, or his own even at that, wound up later on causing him to die. Keynote, him not being able to discern or examine himself caused him later to die. Go ahead.
Saul made a good beginning of defeating the Philistines with the invention of young David, who killed the Philistine companion Goliath. Champion Goliath, foreshadowing things to come. Almost immediately, Saul became suspicious and resentful of David and kept him close by giving David his daughter, Michal, in marriage, and by making David a commander of troops who reported to Saul.
Right, so he kept what he classified as his enemy, David, which David wasn't his enemy. He said he kept him close because he wanted to know. He's like, okay, well, let's see what's going on here. Now, David was already anointed at this time to become a king, but that was a private matter. Listen good. David being anointed as a king was a private matter at the time before it became known. So he got anointed by Samuel, right, privately, and then, because the Lord had sent Samuel to do that, and then David started to make a name for himself after a while. He went out to war. The people started to respect him. They started to love him, walking, going in and out from the people. Then they started to see this man right here, he's going to be the king. He's the king. Look at him. Look at how he moved. And Saul perceived that and became jealous, had an evil eye towards David. So he said, all right, now my throne looked like it's about to be transferred, because he remembered what Samuel said to him back in chapter 13. We're going to get to that. Go ahead.
Saul was determined to pass the throne to his son Jonathan.
So he wanted the throne to go to Jonathan. That's why during the new moon, he was mad at Jonathan for not bringing David in unto him, because there was a whole history behind it. I might not pull it, but Jonathan and David had a meeting one with another that only them two knew about. And it was about, hey, if you see the arrow come near, I forget how it goes. If you see the arrow, then you know to go far out. If it shoots at this distance or so. And Saul knew what Jonathan did. He said, you helped out David escape. Aren't you simple? He's trying to take the kingdom from us because he wanted to give it to Jonathan. He wanted the kingdom to stay there. But the prophecy was by Samuel that he would be supplanted by David because of how he dealt. He had a fatal lack of spiritual discernment. Go ahead.
And neglected the kingdom to pursue David for years.
Right.
Saul's reign lasted about 40 years.
So he still reigned about 40 years. Okay, good. Excellent stuff. Next image is going to be page 83, where it says Saul. Now, this is called History of the Jews by Heinrich Gratz. We're going to be in here for a while today. All right. So later on in the series, I still got some more videos and things, but it's going to take what is this? This is chapter 2, so it's going to take another episode of this to be able to really set the groundwork of it so that way it can all make sense. But I got to pull those cosigners out. So let's get through this, all right? His family, start there.
His family, that of Matri.
Yeah, that of Matri. So this is talking about Saul. Go ahead.
Was one of the lowliest of Benjamin.
Right, one of the lowliest, so one of the most humble. So it mentioned earlier that it was humble, and it also was wealthy because he had a lot of land and provisions. Go ahead.
His father Kish was not in any way distinguished.
People knew about him. Go ahead.
He was a simple countryman.
Simple countryman. Go ahead.
And nothing could be said in his praise.
Go ahead.
Except that he was an upright man.
Right, he was an upright man. He knew how to deal righteously. Go ahead.
Saul was chosen because he was content to work at his plow.
Go ahead.
And which the increase
and
of his
watch the increase.
And watch the increase of his father's flock. He had no thought beyond the village in which he was born.
Read.
And barely an idea that there were human beings to whom the possession of power was an attraction.
Right. Then, so it says, and barely an idea that there was human beings to whom the possession of power was an attraction. Interesting point. Remember that. Go ahead.
In his shyness,
Saul's, go ahead.
He displayed the ways of a true peasant.
So it's of a true peasant. Interesting. Go ahead. Now, I don't subscribe to every single word that's in this book, by the way, because Saul knew how to deal. He knew how to deal in the way that wasn't peasant-like. And I wanted to show the other book first because it says that they were wealthy. So he said he dealt like a peasant, yet at the same time they were wealthy. I ain't taking that. So this is trying to give. Now, this book is made to be in between the scripts. So it's given in like history in between the scriptures, right? But all this making mention of here when it's talking about peasant is that he dealt humbly. I just don't like the word peasant that he used for a king. But anyways, go ahead.
These circumstances and the personal qualities of Saul seem to be a security against any presumption or pride on the part of the first king of Israel.
Okay, all right, interesting. Now, from there, go to 1 Samuel 10 and 21.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 10 and verse 21.
Let's go.
When he had caused the tribe of Benjamin to come near by their families, the family of Matri.
Right, the one we had just read about, it says a lowly family of Benjamin. Go ahead.
Was taken.
There was countryside Benjamin, so they had the money. Go ahead.
And Saul, the son of Kish, was taken. And when they sought him, he could not be found.
Go ahead.
Therefore they inquired of the Lord further, if the man should yet come thither.
Read.
And the Lord answered, behold, he had hid himself among the stuff.
Right. So he had hid himself among the stuff. Go ahead.
And they ran and fetched him thence. And when he stood among the people, he was higher than any of the people from his shoulders and upward.
Right, because he got his height from his dad. Go ahead.
And Samuel said to all the people, see ye him who the Lord has chosen.
Right, see him who the Lord has chosen. Look, there you go. Go ahead.
That there is none like him among all the people.
Go ahead.
And all the people shouted and said, God save the king.
Right, God save the king. Go ahead.
Then Samuel told the people the manner of the kingdom.
Go ahead.
And wrote it in a book.
Read.
And laid it up before the Lord. And Samuel sent all the people away, every man to his house.
So now they knew that this right here was about to be their first king. They was like, this man here. Good. That's an interesting point. Keep reading.
And Saul also went home to Gibeah. And there went with him a band of men whose heart God had touched.
Right.
But the children of Belial said.
So children of the devil said what?
How shall this man save us?
Now I'm going to tell you why this verse is important. Because while they had a lot of people accept him, remember, in the book it said there was an attraction of power, right? While they had a lot of people accept him, there were still others that disliked him. It had nothing to do with the fact that they wanted the Lord to rule over them.
Right.
They didn't like him, but yet these same guys or same people, it doesn't say whether it's male or female, the 10,000s of them started to favor David. And so that jealousy started to fall on Saul. Like, how is it that they didn't like me, but when he comes into power, he was like, wait, hold on. He ascribed to 10,000s? Then the jealousy, the hatred started to flow. I'm building somewhere. Go ahead.
Bring it out. And they despised him and brought him no presents.
They didn't care nothing about giving him nothing. Go ahead.
But he held his peace.
So he said, you know what? I'm going to lean back. I ain't going to do nothing to him. Go to 1 Samuel 8. And I'm going to jump backwards now. So we have read already 1 to 5, right?
Yes, sir.
Go to verse 6 now. Now, the reason I'm going like this with 1 Samuel, we're going to get to Chronicles later on toward the end. You have to read from 1 Samuel, which is called the first book of the Kings, when you look at some of the passages and the books. It goes 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel is really 1 Kings, 2 Kings. 1 Kings and 2 Kings is 3rd and 4th Kings. That's how it's looked at. Then they have 1st and 2nd Chronicles. You have to read from 1 Samuel all the way to 2nd Chronicles the same way you have to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You have to read it the same way. Precept upon precept going here and there because it all links together in one big story. And some of it predates another when you look at the verses in between it. So, 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 6. Read that.
The book of 1 Samuel chapter 8 and verse 6.
Come on.
But the thing displeased Samuel.
So now the thing displeased Samuel. Go ahead.
When they said, Give us a king to judge us.
Give us a king to judge us, because his sons did wickedly, and they was looking at the sons to be next. So Israel was already in the mindset of next in power, next in power. They was already looking at that. And so they was like, well, since we already feel this way, why not we have somebody, just like how the other nations have, they have a king in their lineage based off of their generation. Let's go just how they do it. Give us a king, Samuel. And Samuel was displeased at that. Go ahead.
And Samuel prayed unto the Lord.
Read.
And the Lord said unto Samuel, hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee.
So he said, listen to them. Just go ahead. Don't be offended for my sake, but listen to them. Go ahead.
For they would not reject thee, but they have rejected me.
They rejected me, not you, but me. Go ahead.
That I should not reign over them.
They didn't want the theocracy. That's what we talked about in the last class. They didn't want the theocracy. They wanted a monarchy. Go ahead.
According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt unto this day.
Read.
Wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods. So they do also unto thee.
So they do also unto thee. So it says, up out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto thee. They wanted to be able to please a man more than they wanted to please God. That same spirit, check this out. Watch this. Watch this. That same spirit was in the New Testament. Go to 1 Corinthians. This is why you have to examine yourselves. These same things, these same traits. That's why you have to look at this class in such a way. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, where it says they preferred Cephas. Where we at? Let me see. Hold on. Give me a second. I didn't have this in my notes, y'all. One preferred Cephas, another Paul. Where that's at? Help me out. Oh, 1, not 2, chapter 1, verse 12.
The book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 1 and verse 12.
Go ahead.
Now this I say, that every one of you saith, I am of Paul.
So I'm of Paul. That's the one that they respect or that they listen to more. I'm of Paul. Go ahead.
And I of Apollos.
I came in because of Apollo. Go ahead.
And I of Cephas.
I came in because of Peter. That's his other name. Go ahead.
And I of Christ.
And I came in because I only believe in Christ. I listen to Christ only. When Christ wasn't even there at the time, he was gone. Go ahead.
Is Christ divided?
Is Christ divided?
Was Paul crucified for you?
Read.
Or were ye baptized in the name of Paul?
Read.
I thank God that I baptized none of you, but Cephas and Gaius.
Now jump up to 10.
Verse 10.
Read.
Now I beseech you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that ye all speak the same thing, and that there be no divisions among you.
And that there be no divisions among you. Because there was a division between those who want to serve God and those who want to serve man. They wound up setting up, they was like, we want the man to be in power. Because there was more of them that wanted that versus the ones who wanted God to stay in his stead. Because at the time, there were schools of the prophets. That's what Samuel was doing at the time. Matter of fact, I have a photo actually that showed the schools that he was going to. If I can, I might wind up giving it to y'all at some point when he's reading. But go ahead, go back to 1 Samuel. I'm going to get that image and I'm going to send it. There were 3 places that Samuel had traveled frequently to, and those also where the schools of the prophets were. We're going to get to that soon.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 8 and verse 10.
Go ahead.
And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king.
Now pay attention to these verses here. Watch. Go ahead.
And he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you.
Go ahead.
He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen. And some shall run before his chariots.
And some shall run before his chariots. So he's going to make your sons that were freeborn, he's going to make them his servants. Go ahead.
And he will appoint him captains over thousands,
right,
and captains over 50s, and will set them to ear his ground.
And to ear his ground, meaning the husbandry and the crops and so on and so forth. Make them his servants to be able to use for his own good. Go ahead.
And to reap his harvest.
Reap.
And to make his instruments of war.
And to make his instruments of war. Because and you're going to see these same words in a second when we pull the book out. Go ahead.
And instruments of his chariots.
And instruments of his chariots. Go ahead.
And he will take your daughters to be
confectionaries.
Read. And to be cooks and to be bakers.
So to deal with things inside of the house or inside of his palace. Go ahead.
And he would take your fields and your vineyards,
right,
and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants.
So that would become parts. Or in other words, there would be a tax on their land. And it wasn't a tax when there was no king. But now that there is a king, he's going to tax all of their land and their stuff. Go ahead.
And he will take the tenth of your seed.
And this isn't only Saul. This is going to be other kings afterwards also. This isn't just Saul that's talking about here. So this is going to be referred to throughout the series. But watch, go ahead.
And of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men.
So because each of us had our own servants, and he's going to take all of them. As he need, he's going to take them. Go ahead.
And your asses, and put them to his work. He will take the tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants.
You shall be his servants. Go ahead.
And ye shall cry out in that day, because your king, which ye shall have chosen you, and your Lord, and the Lord will not hear you in that day.
Now, a good example of that when we read later on in the series is, even though Saul had this happen, which we're going to get into, Northern Kingdom was annoyed by this. And that's why they was like, hey, this burden that the king had put on us is too much.
Right.
Release the burden off of us just a little bit, and we'll serve the king forever. And that's when Rehoboam became a fool. So that's a part of the prophecy that played on throughout the book of Kings and Chronicles. This right here that Samuel has said. That whole part right there goes into the prophecy throughout the time of the kings. That's what that is. So watch this now. Go to my next image. And it should say Saul's 2 important victories. I think that's what it says. Saul's 2 important victories. It's the next image I had up. Yes. So hold on. Let me see if I want to start up. No, that's the image. That's the image. Stay right there. Hold on. The Ammonites attacked. No, okay, that's not what I want. All right, so yeah, Saul's 2 important victories. Let's get it. No, go back to where the image was. Go back. Stop moving. There you go. Stay right there. All right, let's read.
For the first time, he exercised his royal prerogative.
No. It says Saul's 2 important victories. It's the bottom paragraph, the very bottom paragraph.
Yes, sir. Saul's 2 important victories. And the assemblage of Gilgal, where homage had been rendered to him by nearly all the tribes, confirmed his power.
It confirmed his power. Go ahead.
And the royal dominion was placed on the prominent basis.
So now, real quick, go to 1 Samuel chapter 11, verse 12. I'm going to show you what he's talking about. Because in the above paragraph, it was talking about how he had defeated the Ammonites. So this is the latter end of that. Watch this. Go to 1 Samuel 11 and 12 down to 15.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 11 and verse 12.
Go ahead.
And the people said unto Samuel, who is he that said, shall Saul reign over us?
So shall Saul reign? So now he said, and the people said unto Samuel, who is he that says, shall Saul reign over us? Because remember, in chapter 10, the children of Belial, they despised him and they didn't want Saul. They was like, the hell with Saul. And so now the question got asked after he had defeated the Ammonites and started to rise in power, that he started to feel that lust that he started to get within him about the power, now having rule over the people. This is where it came out now. Read that again.
And the people said unto Samuel, who is he that said, shall Saul reign over us? Bring the men, that we may put them to death.
So the people started to back Saul. That's what they wanted to do, because Saul had held his peace at the children of Belial that had said that at first. But now the people was like, okay, he just brought this victory for us. Who was the guys that had said that? Now they want to find him. Go ahead.
And Saul said, there shall not a man be put to death this day.
Don't put nobody to death, because he's still holding his peace toward him. Go ahead.
For today the Lord hath wrought salvation in Israel.
Right, defeated the Ammonites. That would be the Japanese today. Go ahead.
Then said Samuel to the people, come, and let us go to Gilgal, and renew the kingdom there.
Let's renew the kingdom in Gilgal. Go ahead.
And all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king.
And there they had made Saul king. So go ahead.
Before the Lord in Gilgal, and there they sacrificed sacrifices of peace offerings before the Lord. And there Saul and all the men of Israel rejoiced greatly.
Right. Now let's go back to our book, because that's what it's talking about here. So now it says Saul's 2 important victories. I'm going to reread it myself, because we're going to go to the next page in a second. It's like Saul's 2 important victories and the assemblage at Gilgal, which is when he had defeated the Ammonites, right? Where homage had been rendered to him by nearly all the tribes, confirmed by nearly, notice that word, nearly all the tribes, because they had some that didn't want him there. Confirmed his power, and the royal dominion was placed on the permanent basis. Although Samuel praised and extolled, next page.
The days of judges.
So he extolled the days of judges because Samuel was the last judge before we got the king. That's what we went over in the last class. Come on.
Yet the people felt that it could better appreciate a king than a hero judge.
Because they didn't want the time of judges to continue. They wanted a king and be like the other nations. Go ahead.
The nation willingly exchanged its republican liberty for the prize of unity and the power obtained thereby.
Right, so they wanted, when they're saying Republican liberty, they ain't talking about Republicans and Democrats. No, it's talking about how they had the freedom outside of being underneath a king, but rather they was underneath God's authority, right? So they was like, we want a king instead. That's what we want. Read on.
The kingly estate led to various changes.
So now notice the changes that it led to. Read on.
Saul had to employ responsible men for the execution of his commands.
Now, that sounds familiar. That sounds familiar to what we was just talking about. Hold on. Didn't in chapter 8 it said that he'll take some of your sons, right? It said that, in verse 11. Read that again. 1 Samuel 8 and 11.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 8 and verse 11.
Go ahead.
And he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you.
Go ahead.
He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen. And some shall run before his chariots.
Go back to the book. And it says Saul had to employ, read that again.
Saul had to employ responsible men for the execution of his commands. He required a number of officers and servants. Officers of war were appointed to rule over hundreds and thousands, respectively.
Right, so it says officers of war were appointed to rule over hundreds of thousands, respectively. Go ahead.
And counselors.
And counselors, right, go ahead.
Who were admitted to the king's table.
Right, go ahead.
A special band of men served as runners.
Razim. So that's another word that it has there, razim. So I'm guessing that's what it actually is going into. I never looked the word up, but razim. Go ahead.
An armed force who became the obedient instruments of the king's will.
Right. So that's what it's talking about when he had people running for his chariots and officers of thousands and so on and so forth. Go ahead.
These and their chief formed the king's court.
Right, so it formed the king's court, and now that was his main men. That was his cabinet, his soldiers. Go ahead, leave it picture in picture. I like that. Go ahead.
Saul's leader of the guard was named Doeg.
So, matter of fact, no, I'm sorry. Take me off. Because, there's a point that we're about to read in there. So now, listen to this part. Saul's leader was what?
Saul's leader of the guard was named Doeg.
Doeg. Important guy to remember. Read.
An Idumean by birth.
An Idumean by birth. Right? Okay. It says Doeg, an Idumean by birth. That was the so-called white man right there.
Right.
So he had made him a chief leader underneath his guard.
The devil.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Owing to the presence of the standing army and attendants. Gibeah,
till then
only a small town, now became the capital.
Go to 1 Samuel 13 and 8. Going over some history, y'all. I got some reading to do.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 13 and verse 8.
If you're in the spirit, you're going to see where this is going. Because right now we're listing things of how he was setting up his kingdom. That's what we're doing. We're taking precept by precept, piece by piece. Seeing how he set up his kingdom. The people he had ruled over, he started to take. Because imagine it. What he did was, he now came into power and he had defeated an enemy that was over them, right? That was giving him hell. Killed them off, and the people that wound up was hesitant over his rulership was starting to back him. They started to back him now. So now he started to come into authority. Monarchy is being fully set up now, right? Then the people that was hesitant to back him started to back him by trying to kill the ones who had said, we don't want him over us. But he still held his peace. Cool. Now he was like, all right, the prophecy of Samuel started to come into play. Give me your sons to be some of my warlords. Give me some of your daughters so they could be my confectionaries, cooks, and so on and so forth. Let me have a tenth of all your sheep, goats, and oxes. Let me have all of that. So now he's starting to put the kingdom underneath his subjection. That's what's going on now, right? Okay, good. So he's starting to rule inside of power, and it's starting to get inside of his head. He's starting to feel himself. Pride is starting to feel him. So he's starting to get the power, moving up in rank. Think about it, right? Good. We're going somewhere. 1 Samuel 13 and 8.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 13 and verse 8.
Come on.
And he tarried 7 days, according to the set time that Samuel had appointed.
According to the set time Samuel had appointed. When you read up, you'll see it. But go ahead.
But Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him.
So people were scattered from him. Go ahead.
And Saul said, bring hither a burnt offering to me.
Now pause. Hold on. I'm going to tell you why this is important. Because in the book, it also mentions about how Saul, he just jumped the gun a lot, right? I'm going to tell you. This scripture right here comes to mind when I had read this. Go to Psalms. Let me see. Let me find it. Psalms
it's a precept.
Psalms chapter 19, verse 12 and 13. Because remember, while we're reading this, you want to look at the spirit that the men are moving in, or the women, if we go over them, which we will. Look at how they're moving and how you can be like, okay, do I do this? Is this happening around? If it's not you, is this happening around me? Watch this. Go ahead.
The book of Psalms, chapter 19 and verse 12.
Come on.
Who can understand his errors?
Who can understand his errors?
Cleanse thou me from secret faults.
Right, because Saul had a fatal failure, a fatal lack of self-examination. Right? Okay, because he didn't cleanse his secret faults. Read on.
Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins.
He said, keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Hey, real quick, can y'all look that word up? I didn't even bother, but can y'all look up that word presumptuous? Presumptuous. Yeah, so presumptuous sins. Matter of fact, show the people you searching it. So that way they ain't got to look at my face all day. Yeah, just drag it over and let them see you searching it. That way they ain't got to look at me. So, again, it's a lot of history we're going into, but it's going to be cool. Presumptuous sin. No, just presumptuous. I knew y'all was going to do that. I'm glad I said that. Go back to presumptuous. All I want is the definition. Click, enter. Good. Now scroll down. So, you see what happens when you actually can see what they're doing back there? That's why bitch be like, IT. Anyways, presumptuous. Read that.
Presumptuous of a person or their behavior.
Or of their behavior. Go ahead.
Failing to observe the limits of what is permitted or appropriate.
Okay. So it says, failing to observe the limits of what is permitted or what is appropriate. Go ahead. Now, click the down. Yeah, there we go. So it says brazen, overconfident, arrogant, egotistical, because Saul was an egotistical maniac. Bold, audacious, rude, cheeky, hasty. Interesting. All of those spirits is what you can put inside of Saul. And it's also inside of a lot of brothers. It's also inside of a lot of sisters. Right. Watch this. Go back to 1 Samuel chapter 13 now. Read verse 8 one more again.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 13 and verse 8.
I ain't going to be able to get through all of this. This is going to be a part 2 to just this part. Go ahead.
And he tarried 7 days.
Go ahead.
According to the set time that Samuel had appointed. But Samuel came not to Gilgal.
Read.
And the people were scattered from him.
People were scattered from him. Go ahead.
And Saul said, bring hither a burnt offering to me, and peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offering. And it came to pass
so go ahead.
That as soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering.
So now Samuel had told him to wait. Samuel wanted him to wait. That's what he wanted to do. Samuel wanted Saul to wait.
Message.
He didn't want him to do anything until he gave him word, but Saul was impatient. Saul was impatient. Read on.
Behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him, that he might salute him.
So think about it. Just think about it. Look in between here for a second. So you ever did something that you knew you didn't get full clarity on, right? But you just start to do it because in your mind, you're thinking you're taking initiative, like you're doing the right thing, right? You go and do something, and then the person that you know is going to correct you on your behavior is going to be the one you can run out. Oh, hey, what's going on, man? You know, how's it going? You try to hurry up and try to meet them at the door, for example. You're doing something in the house. You try to hurry up and meet them at the door.
Damn. Wow.
And so he ran out and met Samuel. He's like, oh, hey, hey, shalom, bro. Hey, how's it going? Hey, yes, how's it going? And then now Samuel, he like,
the hell is this?
Yeah, that's what he said. Read on.
And Samuel said, what hast thou done?
What did you do? Go ahead.
And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattered from me.
So now he's starting to make an excuse. He's starting to make an excuse. Real quick. Hold on. Sirach, what is that, 32:17? Yes, give me that. So Saul is starting to make excuses when he started to be presumptuous and starting to do something that was out of order, that he was not told to do, that was beyond his control. He shouldn't have did nothing. He was told to wait. He didn't listen. So, go ahead.
The book of Sirach, chapter 32 and verse 17.
Read.
A simple man will not be reproved.
Will not be reproved.
But findeth an excuse according to his will.
But he found an excuse according to his will. So look, here's an excuse, and it's going to be according to what he thought was right. Go back to 1 Samuel 13:11 now.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 13 and verse 11.
Go ahead.
And Samuel said, what hast thou done? And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattered from me.
The people were scattered. He's trying to make his point. The people were scattered from me. I didn't, I can imagine him stuttering at this point. Go ahead.
And that thou camest not within the days appointed.
So you didn't come around the time you said you was going to come. Go ahead.
And that the Philistines gathered themselves together at Michmash.
At Michmash. So he was starting to get nervous, and he was like, they're starting to gather. Let me go ahead and make a sacrifice. I know this is what Samuel would tell me to do. Let me just go ahead and do it. Go ahead.
Therefore said I, the Philistines will come down upon me to Gilgal.
Read.
And I have not made supplication unto the Lord.
Read.
I forced myself, therefore, and offered a burnt offering.
So he said, I forced myself. So he knew that it was wrong. That's how you know. There's words that you got to put inside there that you got to look at. He said, I forced myself. That's presumptuous. He said, I forced myself to do it. Real quick, Psalms chapter 18. Psalms chapter 18 and verse, let me find it. 18 and verse, hold on. Let me find it. Distress, my cry can perform. Hold on. 23.
The book of Psalms, chapter 18 and verse 23.
Read.
I was also upright before him, and I kept myself from mine iniquity.
So he said, I kept myself from my iniquity. This was something that David had prophesied, right? So he said, I kept myself from my iniquity. Saul, he didn't keep himself. He forced himself into his iniquity. He forced himself into it. So go back. 1 Samuel 13 and 13 now. We're going to go down to 14.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 13 and verse 13. And Samuel said to Saul, thou hast done foolishly.
He did stupidly. Go ahead.
Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever.
Now listen very good to this next verse. He said, I would have set it up for you forever, but what? Go ahead.
But now thy kingdom shall not continue.
But now thy kingdom shall not continue. I want y'all to pay attention to this verse. Because of this right here is why the kingdom got transferred to Judah instead of staying with Benjamin. It was not because of just the Amalekite. Before the Amalekite, which was his second era, that really confirmed why it wasn't going to stay. Not saying that it wasn't part of it. But because of what he did here is why it was like, you know what? Because of this is why the kingdom won't continue. Read it again.
But now thy kingdom shall not continue.
Go ahead.
The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart.
So you have to pay attention. The Lord will wind up replacing you if you're prideful and you listen to your own mind versus the counsel that you got. Real quick, hold that, go to Sirach. The Lord will replace you. He don't need any of us because he wants us. He wants us to listen to counsel. That's what we never did back in the past. That's why we're looking at this. Sirach chapter 36. Hold on. Let me get it. Oh, is it 37? Yeah, 37 and 14. No, 13.
The book of Sirach, chapter 37 and verse 14. 13.
Go ahead.
And let the counsel of thine own heart stand.
Read.
For there is no man more faithful unto thee than it.
But watch this. Because they have sometimes, that's that scripture about a gut feeling, right? So, okay, he had a gut feeling, sure. But he had counsel, though. That's the difference. He had counsel and was told what to do. It's not one of those things where, shall we take this, and like when he asked the Lord, shall we take this land, or maybe should we hide and then pounce on him later, like Jonathan did later, right? But God, watch this. Go ahead.
For a man's mind is somewhat wont to tell him more than 7 watchmen.
Go ahead.
That it above in all.
Right, that sit above in an high tower. So, for example, verse 13, again, like the gut feeling. Later on, Jonathan, he wound up he told his armor bearer, this is a good example. He told his armor bearer, he said, if they say, come up unto us, then you know that the Lord will deliver them into our hand. But if they said, tarry and wait, then he says, the Lord didn't deliver them, let us stay hiding. Because Jonathan, his armor bearer, was in a trench. So when they said, come up to us, that's how Jonathan knew that it was time for him to go. That was the gut feeling that he had, right? Because that's how he knew that right there was a sign that the Lord was going to wind up delivering them into our hand. What Saul did wasn't a gut feeling. He was just being a Negro and not listening to counsel. That's why it says in verse 14, read that again.
Verse 14.
Read.
For a man's mind is somewhat want to tell him more than 7 watchmen.
Go ahead.
That sit above in a high tower.
Right, it's always telling you this. Oh, go this way. Do that. Go ahead.
And above all, this pray to the Most High.
Go ahead.
That he would direct thy way in truth.
Next verse.
Let reason go before every enterprise.
Let reason go before every enterprise. Go ahead.
And counsel
before
every action.
Before every action. Now, jump back to 1 Samuel 13 and 14 one more again.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 13 and verse 14. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord had sought him a man after his own heart.
So he sought a man after his own heart, and he already now this right here is talking about David. Go ahead.
And the Lord had commanded him to be captain over his people.
Read.
Because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee.
Right, thou hast not kept that which the Lord has commanded thee. All right, good. Let's roll on. Go to page 92, and it should be a red underline on it where it says, according to Samuel's command. Page 92. So that's on my next slide. Y'all give me that. Okay, sorry, y'all, if it looks stretched. I had to stretch it to make it fit. But I'm sure if you get your face real close to the screen, don't do that. You're going to ruin your eyes. But no, I'm sure you can read it, though. I can see it from where I'm at. Go ahead.
The history of the Jews, page 92. According to Samuel's command, this spoil was to be destroyed.
So now, real quick. I'm sorry. Go back to page 91. I jumped the gun. Go back to page 91 and where it says, it was, however. That's where it has a bullet point on it. At the bottom paragraph. Page 91? Yep.
Page 91.
Go ahead.
It was, however, no light task to undertake hostilities against the Amalekites.
So now we're jumping ahead, right? Now we're jumping forward. So that was when he did the mistake over there at Gilgal to make a sacrifice when Samuel told him not to do so, right? Because he told him to wait. Good. So now we're jumping ahead. So that was the first mistake. Now we're jumping to the next mistake that wound up really taking the kingdom from his hand when what everybody knows about when he didn't kill the Amalekites. Okay, good. Let's read. Come on.
Agag was considered a great hero and inspired all around him with fear. But although the Amalekites were renowned for their courage and power.
So, hey, you know what I want you to do? Jump up in that same thing where it says the Amalekites were the implacable and hereditary enemies. It's like a little bit underneath the last red line. You see where it says it? Read that.
The Amalekites were the implacable and hereditary enemy of the Israelites.
Okay. So it says the Amalekites were the implacable and hereditary enemies of the Israelites. Even today, same thing.
Right.
They were the main enemies. They always was our biggest enemies. Go ahead.
And had displayed the greatest cruelty towards them during their wanderings in the desert.
Displayed the greatest cruelty. Go ahead.
And on their entry into the Holy Land.
And on the entry to when we was making our journey. Go ahead.
These enemies often joined other nations in order to crush the Israelites. The Amalekite king, Agag, appears to have caused great trouble to the tribe of Judah in the days of Saul.
So they called troubles to Judah. So now the Lord wanted judgment on Amalek for what they had did, a specific city, right? Good. Let's get to it. Come on.
It was, however, no light task to undertake hostilities against the Amalekites.
Right.
Agag was considered a great hero.
He was considered a great hero amongst the Amalekites. Go ahead.
And inspired all around him with fear. But although the Amalekites were renowned for their courage and power,
right,
Saul did not hesitate to prepare for this hazardous campaign.
Read.
He appears to have carried on the strife with skill and courage.
Go ahead.
and to have drawn the enemy into an ambush.
Go ahead.
By which he was enabled to obtain
a complete victory. Go ahead. I was trying to read along with you. Go ahead. He took
the capital, possibly Kadesh, killed the men, women, and children, and captured the dreaded King Agag.
So he says captured. Notice that. He says captured the dreaded King Agag. Go to 1 Samuel 15 now. I'm sure that y'all see like how we're going about this. We're picking little pieces and going in between the scriptures that you're seeing it, right? Good. Go to 1 Samuel chapter 15 and verse 1. We're going to read 1 to 9.
The book of 1 Samuel chapter 15 and verse 1.
Go ahead.
Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore, hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord.
So hearken unto the voice of the word of the Lord. So now this was almost like a second chance. What he did the first time wasn't forgotten. Because the Lord, remember in 1 Samuel 13:14, the Lord already sought out somebody that was going to replace him. But this right here is so he can regain his name with God. But look at what he did. Go ahead, read on.
Thus said the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel.
Go ahead.
How he laid wait for him in the way when he came up from Egypt.
Right, because he was a cruel enemy to us when we was trying to make our way. Go ahead.
Now go and smite Amalek.
Now, one thing you didn't see here was how it said inside the book that they was being cruel to Judah, right? That's what we had pulled out in the book, being cruel to Judah. So now he wanted Saul, go and kill them. Go and deal with them. Go ahead.
And utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not.
And don't spare none of them. No captures, none of their spoils. Go ahead.
But slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass.
Go ahead.
And Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Temilam. 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah.
And 10,000 men of Judah. He said, let's go. Come on.
And Saul came to the city of Amalek and laid wait in the valley.
So he wanted them from Judah because he knew that Judah had a reason to really beat they behind. He was like, they causing trouble against Judah. I know Judah had their spirit roused up to go and fight them. Go ahead.
And Saul said unto the Kenites, go, depart, get you down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them.
Read.
For ye showed kindness to all the children of Israel when they came up out of Egypt.
Right, go ahead.
So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites.
So they departed away from the Jewish. That's who we call them today. Go ahead.
And Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah until thou camest to Shur.
Read.
That is over against Egypt.
That's over against Egypt. Read.
And he took Agag the king.
He took Agag as a capture. Go ahead.
Of the Amalekites alive.
So he took him alive. He was supposed to kill him, but he took him alive. Saul was hard-headed, boy. He was hard-headed. Real quick, I got to get that scripture. Sirach chapter 10. Pride go before destruction. I think 10 and 12 is what it is. Say, what time I got? Okay. Is it 10 and 12? Give me that. Pride go before destruction. Is 16 and 18?
The book of Proverbs, chapter 6.
I'm sorry. Is that it? Give me that.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 16 and verse 18. Pride goes before destruction.
Pride goes before destruction. Go ahead.
And the haughty spirit before a fall.
And the haughty spirit, a hard-headed mind, like inside your own head kind of spirit before a fall. Right. Saul experienced all of that. Did I post? I said Sirach earlier, didn't I? Yes, sir. I did. All right, but Proverbs is what I wanted. You in the spirit, bro. All right, so yes, because that's what I was quoting. So go back to 1 Samuel 15. And where you left off at? We had 9 now, right?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15 and verse 9.
Come on.
But Saul and the people spared Agag, and the best of the sheep.
And the best of the sheep.
And of the oxen.
And of the oxen.
And of the fatlings.
Go ahead.
And the lambs.
Read.
And all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them.
Come on.
But everything that was vile and refuse, that they destroyed utterly.
Right, because if they was like, there's no good to this, then they utterly destroyed it, right? So, but they still kept some stuff, and they were supposed to destroy everything, get rid of everything. Jump down to 22 and 23.
Verse 22.
So now, go ahead.
And Samuel said, had the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices.
So now, from verse 17 down, I didn't want to read all of it. I'm going to just explain it. From 17 down to 21, Saul and Samuel was going at it one with another. That's what was happening. They were arguing because Saul had found good, how it says inside the book, good booty, good, what is that? Good treasure. That's what he had. So Samuel was like, yo, you speaking foolish. Does Saul have great delight in what? Go ahead.
And Saul said, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices?
Just like now, burnt offerings and sacrifices. He had said the same argument back in 1 Samuel 13. I made a sacrifice because they was trying to gather against me in Michmash. Same thing. Matter, you know what? We might as well. Jump up to 17.
Verse 17.
Yeah.
And Samuel said, when thou wast little in thine own sight, was thou not made the head of the tribes of Israel?
Right, because he came from a small family, Matri, over there in the countryside of Benjamin. That's why I said when he was little in thine own sight, he regarded himself as a peasant, as humble. That's why we had God that. Go ahead.
And the Lord anointed thee king over Israel.
Go ahead.
And the Lord sent thee on a journey and said, go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites.
Go ahead.
And fight against them. Until they be consumed.
Until they're all dead. Go ahead.
Wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord?
Go ahead.
But didst fly upon the spoil, and didst evil in the sight of the Lord.
And then Saul come back to argue at Samuel and says what? Go ahead.
And Saul said unto Samuel, yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord.
He said, no, he said, what you talking about? I did obey what God said. Go ahead.
And have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag, the king of Amalek.
And I brought Agag, the king of Amalek. So he, in his own mind, a man's mind is wont to tell him more than 7 watchmen. He's remembering it different than what Samuel actually told him the Lord told him to do. Go ahead.
And have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took of the spoil.
Right.
Sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice
go ahead,
unto the Lord thy God in Gilgal.
Same thing that he said in Samuel 13. Same excuse. Same thing. So he never got that spirit off him. He didn't learn. That's another thing. Saul did not learn from his mistakes. That's another thing. Saul did not learn from his mistakes. Verse 22.
Verse 22.
Come on.
And Samuel said, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord?
Come on.
Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice.
To obey is better than sacrifice. Go ahead.
And to hearken than the fat of rams.
And to listen than the fat of rams. Read.
For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft.
Go ahead. Now it says rebellion, that's one, is as the sin of witchcraft. What Samuel did here was just also put a prophecy out there about knowing what his latter sin that was going to wind up getting him killed was. Because he did rebellion these first times. The latter end that got him killed was witchcraft. Watch, go ahead.
And stubbornness.
And stubbornness
is as iniquity and idolatry.
Because that's what Saul never learned from. Go ahead.
Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord.
Read.
He has also rejected thee from being king.
Because that was his second mistake. He said 2 strikes, boom, you out, you gone. Jump down. Verse 32.
Verse 32.
Come on.
Then said Samuel, bring ye hither to meet Agag, the king of Amalekites.
Because Agag was like, oh, the fear of death is past from me now. He thought he wasn't going to die because it's been some time. Go ahead.
And Agag came unto him delicately. And Agag said, surely the bitterness of death is past.
All right, see, there you go. Go ahead.
And Samuel said, as thy sword hath made women childless.
Childless. Go ahead.
So shall thy mother be childless among women.
So now, just as Agag was coming after us and killing some of us, he's like, so the same way now I'm about to do to you. Go ahead.
And Samuel hewed Agag in pieces.
Chopped him up in pieces. Hey, Samuel was a bad brother right there, boy, I'll tell you. Samuel was a bad man. Go ahead.
But for the Lord in Gilgal. Then Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house to Gibeah of Saul.
So now Saul went to go meditate on what he had just missed out on. Go ahead.
And Samuel came no more to see Saul.
So listen to this. Samuel came no more to see Saul until what?
Until the day of his death.
That's heavy. We're going to get to that later. Go ahead.
Nevertheless, Samuel mourned for Saul.
Samuel mourned for Saul because he liked Saul. Go ahead.
And the Lord repented that he had made Saul king over Israel.
Good. Now, go back up to the book I had, page 92, History of the Jews. Hey, IT, how much time I got? How long has it been running? Oh, okay, we good. Come on.
The History of the Jews, page 92.
So according to Samuel, go ahead.
According to Samuel command, this spoil was to be destroyed.
So did we read 91 where it says it was, however, we finished that? Agag considered a great hero. He appears to have carried the strife with skill and courage and have drawn the enemies into an ambush. Okay, we did. Okay, yeah. So now read this, the red highlighted part in 92, yes.
Yes, sir. According to Samuel's command, this spoil was to be destroyed, so that every trace of the memory of Amalek might be lost.
Go ahead.
The soldiers, however, did not wish this rich spoil to be given up to destruction.
So they didn't want that to be given up to destruction. Watch this. So this is where, real quick, before we read the very next line, go to Jeremiah chapter, I think, 2:22. I think that's it. Let me see. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 22. There's a lot of stuff that be popping. Those of y'all who make classes, there's a lot of stuff that be popping into your mind right when the class get rolling. It makes it just a little longer. I figured that I was going to do that, so I made space in my class just for that purpose. Jeremiah, I'm sorry, chapter 2, I think it's 20. Where it said, the scripture I want is where it says, trim the ways. Where is that again? I forgot. 2:31? 2:33. Yes, that's it. Go ahead. Right chapter, wrong verse. Go ahead.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 2, and verse 33.
Go ahead.
Why trimmest thou thy way to seek love?
So why trimmest thou thy way to seek love? We're going to read the next line in a second, but go ahead.
Therefore hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways.
Okay, now let's read the next line that we was about to read, right after the red highlight. Saul ordinarily, so rigid in his discipline, permitted the preservation of the booty. Right, the riches that he had got. That's what he was arguing about with Samuel. Go ahead.
And thus transgress the prophet's direction.
And so he sinned against what the prophet told him to do. Samuel, go ahead.
Saul was very proud of his victory over the dreaded Amalekites. And he caused the king Agag to be led in chains as a living sign of triumph.
That's not what he was supposed to do, though. Go ahead.
His success in battle intoxicated him.
So he wound up filling his whole mind up with, I'm the man. I've arrived. That's what he feel like now. I win. I've arrived. I'm here. I made it. That's what you feel like now. Go ahead.
And it caused him to forget his former humility.
So it caused him to forget the way he used to act. Because remember, they described the way he used to act was very humble, humility, like a peasant, right? They was describing those things about his manners, how he used to deal, how he grew up. But all of the power, the riches, the servants that was at his beck and call, which is, if y'all was paying attention, that's why we read all of that. He was gaining in power. All of that stuff started to go right to his head. Now look at what he's starting to do. He didn't be mindful of the God that had begot him. So that's good. That's a message. His success in battle intoxicated him. That's a heavy word. Go ahead.
On his return,
it caused him to forget his former humility. Right? You said that. Go ahead.
On his return, he erected a monument of his victory in the oasis of Carmel.
Go ahead.
Meanwhile, Samuel, in a prophetic vision, had learned that the king had not fulfilled the instructions given him and was therefore to be punished.
So he was therefore to be punished. Okay, all right. Next page, 93. We already had read where it says, had the Lord as great delight. Matter of fact, there's no point in even reading that. So now jump to 1 Samuel 16. You can skip that. The next page we're going to read is 95, but we ain't going to get it yet. Just have it ready for me. 1 Samuel 16, 11 to 13.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 16 and verse 11.
Go ahead.
And Samuel said unto Jesse, Are here all thy children?
So remember, and hold that. Go to 1 Samuel 13. Hold that right there. 1 Samuel 13 and 14 again.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 13 and verse 14.
Go ahead.
But now thy kingdom shall not continue. Mm-hmm. The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart.
The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart. Hey, where that precept at? Ply, help me out. Where that precept at in Acts? David?
The book of Acts, chapter 13 and verse 22.
Right. From the hip. That's where I got it from. But go ahead.
And when he had removed him, he raised up.
Jump up to 21.
And afterward, they desired a king. And God gave unto him Saul the son of Cis.
Right, Kish, that's what it is. Go ahead.
A man of the tribe of Benjamin, by the space of 40 years.
By the space of 40 years. Go ahead.
And when he had removed him,
go ahead.
He raised up unto them David to be their king.
David to be their king.
To whom also he gave testimony and said,
Read.
I have found David the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart.
Go ahead.
Which shall fulfill all my will.
Now, 1 Samuel 13:14. One more again. We're putting the pieces together, y'all. Putting the pieces together. Again, there's a lot of history inside of these things. You got to read it same way like you would Matthew all the way to John, the New Testament, for example. You have to read it the same way, precept and precept. 1 Samuel 13:14 again.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 13 and verse 14.
Come on.
But now thy kingdom shall not continue.
Come on.
The Lord had sought him a man after his own heart.
Read.
And the Lord had commanded him to be captain over his people.
Read.
Because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee.
So now it's 1 Samuel 16:11. One more time.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 16 and verse 11.
Bring it out.
And Samuel said unto Jesse, Are here all thy children?
Are here all thy children, Jesse? Go ahead.
He said, There remaineth yet the youngest.
Yet the youngest.
And behold, he keepeth the sheep.
He keeps the sheep. Go ahead.
And Samuel said unto Jesse,
Come on.
Send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither.
Read on.
And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and withal of a beautiful countenance.
Right.
And goodly to look to. And the Lord said, Arise, anoint him, for this is he.
Right. Now, this anointing was a private matter. This was not out in the open where everybody could see God save the king. It wasn't that. Right. This was at the house of Jesse. This was not open because there's somewhere in the book, I can't remember, but Samuel actually feared that Saul would kill him if he saw Samuel anointing somebody else as king.
Damn. Wow.
There was somewhere else in this book. I couldn't find it. If I could, I'm going to go back to it in one of the other portions of the class. But Saul would have killed or tried to kill Samuel. Huh? 16:2? What you talking about? Oh, 16:2. That's what it said? That's it. Go ahead.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 16 and verse 2. And Samuel said, How can I go? If Saul hear it, he will kill me.
Oh, well, yeah, there you go. Appreciate it. The reason why I had said it, that's it. I like that right there. Read that again.
And Samuel said, How can I go? If Saul hear it, he will kill me.
Right, that was Samuel's response to God. But in the book, it had gave a little bit more detail. That's the only thing. But I like that because that's right to the point. Come on.
And the Lord said, Take an heifer with thee.
Right, a heifer is a big red cow, by the way. Go ahead.
Right.
And say, I am come to sacrifice to the Lord.
So now he had to make up something to go away from Saul so he can go and anoint David. Read on, go back to down to 13 now. Verse 13.
Verse 13.
Uh-huh.
And Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren.
Right.
And the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah.
So he rose up and went to Ramah. Jump down to 19.
Verse 19.
We're going to read to 21.
Wherefore Saul sent messengers unto Jesse and said, Send me David thy son.
So now Saul perceived something was up. This is, believe it or not, this is now getting into the part about through jealousy enters the king. This is into it because remember all the stuff they had got. You needed all of that so that way you can see how he rose to power. How he started out was good. Then when he started to get power, it affected him and then brought out those evil spirits. Because sometimes when you actually start to get things, it can really show the real you. All of that came out.
Right.
And then now he's starting to see himself get replaced. And then that real bad side of him start to come out and then show itself to David. So now believe it or not, now we're getting into how that jealousy came into David sitting on the throne. 19.
Verse 19.
Come on.
Wherefore Saul sent messengers unto Jesse and said, Send me David thy son, which is with the sheep. And Jesse took an ass laden with bread and a bottle of wine and a kid and sent them by David his son unto Saul.
Right, so he sent them away. So that goes right back again into 1 Samuel 8. When he said he'll take his sons and then make them with his chariots, his warmen, captains, all. That's what it goes right back into. Go ahead. Because Saul wanted him close because he knew that he was going to be something. He couldn't say whether he was going to be king yet because, again, David was anointed privately. So he couldn't say what. He said, I just know this young man here is going to be great. This was before Goliath. He said, I knew this is going to be great. Let me get him next to me because I don't know what it is. I remember that Samuel said somebody was going to replace me. maybe this is him. Let me keep him close. Go ahead.
And David came to Saul and stood before him. And he loved him greatly. And he became his armor bearer.
He became his armor bearer. Go ahead.
And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, let David, I pray thee, stand before me, for he hath found favor in my sight.
Right, go ahead.
And it came to pass, when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul.
So, because remember, if it was a good deed that Saul did to Jesse by getting David, evil spirit would have never came on in regards to this matter. That evil spirit is mentioning here is the jealousy that he felt knowing that he was about to be replaced by this man he's grooming. That's what it is. That was the jealousy. That's the evil spirit. Read it again, 23.
And it came to pass, when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, that David took an harp and played with his hand. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him.
And the evil spirit departed from him. Now, let's jump to the book again. So now we're going to jump. Let me see. Hold on. Let me see. There's a certain part that I want. It says it happened. That's where we at. Because we're about to get in towards the whole Goliath part. So that's page 95 where it says it happened. Yeah, thank you. All right, let's go.
Page 95. It happened. It happened during one of the frequent fights with the enemy that Saul's troops were drawn up in martial array against the Philistines.
Now, this was a great war that was happening because this right here was one of those battles to prove which kingdom was strongest to be able to rule the planet. That's what this was for the Philistines against the Israelites. Who's stronger? They brought their best army out. Both sides was ready to get it going, get it rocking. They was like, all right, let's go. Which one of us is strongest? Give me my best warrior. Bring out Goliath. Bring out Saul and all of his men. That's what's going on. Come on.
And the two armies stood face to face.
Go ahead.
Separated from each other only by a deep ravine.
Only by a deep ravine. So, well, go ahead.
Both were
There's
fearful.
like a very deep trench and whatnot. Go ahead.
Both were fearful of taking the first decisive step.
So both of them was like whoever. It's almost like when you look at boxing, right? The two real good fighters that everybody can't wait to see. It'd be a little bit before you see that first punch thrown. You see a lot of dodging first. They waiting. They see who's gonna throw the first one. It's like they're anticipating the first hit, the first move. That's what's going on between these two armies. They were the two strongest at the time. Go ahead.
At length, the Philistines made the proposal that the battle should be settled by single combat.
Right, so they was like, all right, by single combat. Let's get our best warrior. Single combat, go ahead.
And they sent forth as their champion, the gigantic warrior Goliath.
Now, everybody know about this history, but go ahead. I'm revealing some stuff inside of it, though, but go ahead.
King Saul would gladly have seen one of his army to go forth to the duel.
Right.
And he promised the victor rich presents, exemption from taxes, freedom from compulsory service, and the hand of one of his daughters.
So he would have gave him freedom for all the things that Samuel prophesied in 1 Samuel 8. He would have gave him freedom from that and promised him one of the daughters so that way he can sit in the king's court.
That's it.
Go ahead.
But not even at such a price did any one of the Israelite army dare to oppose himself to Goliath.
Right, go ahead.
Then, as if by chance, a shepherd boy of Bethlehem,
David,
a town near to the field of battle, presented himself and brought about a decisive issue.
Right, this shepherd.
The shepherd of Bethlehem, directly or indirectly, was the cause of a revolution in the history of Israel.
Go ahead.
And in the history of the human race.
In the history of the human race. Interesting stuff right there. Interesting stuff. All right, come on, David.
David, then known only to the inhabitants of the village or town of Bethlehem, was since become a celebrated name throughout the world.
He became a celebrated name throughout the world because of his victory. We still talk about that right now. We didn't even see the battle, and we still talk about it. Jump down where it says Jesse the father. Page 90, what is that, 96?
Page 96.
Come on.
Jesse the father of David was not descended from a distinguished house of Judah.
Right, he wasn't. Now notice the similarities between who God's choosing, right? I think even in Judges, Gideon, he came from a farm, a countryside. He didn't know war. He wasn't no prophet per se, like he said out of his mouth. But he was like, the Lord chose him to rule, to judge Israel. Right. Goes to Saul. Was that humble in his own beginnings, countryside, minded his business, didn't mind looking after sheep after the herd. The Lord chose him, but then you mind him going off. Now he goes to David. Wasn't was like how it says, he belonged to a very humble family, right? The Lord has certain ways how he chooses people. He likes them to have humble beginnings and people that know their place. That's the ones he likes. People that know their place, not trying to be all high and mighty, trying to do all this extra stuff. People who know their place and don't have no problem giving honor to God. That's the ones that the Lord chooses. Read Jesse the father again from there.
Jesse, the father of David, was not descended from a distinguished house of Judah,
right?
But like all the inhabitants of Bethlehem, right, belonged to a very humble family.
Go ahead.
David was about 18 years old when he was anointed.
So about 18 years old when he was anointed. Interesting stuff. Go ahead.
And was not distinguished either by his experience or by any deed.
So now that's rough estimates. 18. Go ahead.
The beautiful pasture land round about Bethlehem had till then composed his world.
Right.
But faculties lay dormant in him which only needed to be aroused to make him excel his contemporaries. Contemporaries.
Go ahead.
Intellectually, as Saul surpassed them physically.
So David had a different way of going about his excelling into glory, while Saul had a different way also. Right. Okay. So watch this next part, because remember in 1 Samuel chapter 16, David played the harp, and then Saul's spirit was revived, right? I want to show you something. Read on.
David was preeminently gifted with poetic and musical talent.
He was gifted with it. But look how good it was. Think about this. Just imagine it. Go ahead.
And while he yet tended his flock, his harp awakened the echoes of the mountains.
Pause. It says, whilst he yet tended to the flock, his harp awakened the echoes of the mountains. Think about that thing. In this country, he playing a harp. Now, he tended to the flock, but while he playing the harp, he played beautiful music that wound up singing through the mountains. You heard the echoes throughout. It was enough to change you, make you happy, so on and so forth. You know how to play that thing. And that's what wound up changing Saul's spirit. Go ahead.
A single circumference, however, sufficed to change this youth unto a man.
Right, suffice to change this youth into a man. So jump down where it says, but he learned something. It's like in the next paragraph. Sir. Yeah.
But he learned something more in Samuel's surroundings.
Go ahead.
He learned to know God.
He learned to know God. That was the main thing, right? 1 Samuel 17 and 20.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 17 and verse 20.
Now, this was during the war. So now the war was going on near David's land, right? That's something else that the book also reveals. It was somewhat near David's land. So they was able to go up, he was able to get himself up to go and see with the battle. That's what him and his brothers was arguing. He says, is there not a cause? Raj, go ahead, verse 20.
And David rose up early in the morning.
Go ahead.
And left the sheep with the keeper.
Go ahead.
And took and went, as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight.
Right, that's the big ravine, the trench. Go ahead.
And shouted for the battle.
Read.
For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array. Army against army.
One big army versus another big army. But they already delegated, single combat is how we're going to make this thing work. Go ahead.
And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage.
Go ahead.
And ran into the army and came and saluted his brethren.
Hey, shalom. He came in sneaking. He's like, hey, what's going on here? What's happening? Go ahead.
And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath.
Read.
Goliath by name.
The monster-like warrior. Go ahead.
Out of the armies of the Philistines.
Come on.
And spake according to the same words. And David heard them.
Right, and David heard them. Now, David got mad. He was like, yo, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should talk to the Lord's people? Jump down to 50.
Verse 50.
Read.
So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone.
All of y'all know this history by now, so there's no reason for me to read the whole thing. I wasn't going to do that anyways. Go ahead.
And smote the Philistine and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran.
I'm sorry, jump down to 55 now.
Verse 55.
Read.
And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine.
So when Saul saw how David went against the Philistine, right? Because remember, he kept him close. He knew something was up. So he saw him go up and then defeat him because nobody else in the army had the spirit to do what David did. Go ahead.
He sent it to Abner, the captain of his host.
Now, they have another portion of his book where it says Abner was a mighty man of war. He was nobody to be trifled with or tampered with. Abner was a beast. But go ahead. And somewhere in this, later on in this series, we're going to go deep into the mighty men of God. We're going to go into that.
Yes, sir.
Just give us time. We got to build there. Abner just mentioned one of the names, but go ahead.
Abner, whose son is this youth?
Uh-huh.
And Abner said, as thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell.
He said, I don't know whose son this is. Again, there was a small family. He said, I don't know whose son this is that just killed this great warrior. Go ahead.
And the king said, inquire thou whose son this stripling is.
Uh-huh.
And as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistines.
So now I want you to notice something. Saul saw David go forth against Philistine. He said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? Think about it. Didn't we read earlier that Saul wanted David next to him as his armor bearer? So how you don't know who David is? Just think about it. How you don't know who David is? Because he's trying to keep him close because he's assuming that there's somebody that's going to replace him. He remembered Samuel's words. So he's like, I'm assuming him because, they had some things about him that he knew how to do. He's like, okay, I'm going to have him as my armor bearer. Your sons shall be my warriors and so on and so forth. He was doing that to a lot of families. It wasn't just Jesse's family. Saul did that to a lot of families. It's just this family in particular was the one that wound up becoming the king. So he was like, whose son is this? Abner was like, I don't know. Because he had a decent amount of armor bearers. Interesting. Go ahead. And the king? In verse 56, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And the king said, inquire thou whose son this stripling is.
Now go ahead.
And as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistines,
Read.
Abner took him and brought him before Saul.
Read.
With the head of the Philistine in his hand.
So he had the head of the Philistine, a bloody head. Go ahead.
And Saul said to him, whose son art thou, thou young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite.
Right, the Bethlehemite. So that's interesting. He didn't even know who he was, but he called for him to be his servant. That's what I'm saying. He had the spirit of jealousy to where he did that with multiple families. He did it. Kings regularly did it according to 1 Samuel chapter 8. He did it with him and then brought him in close. So that way now David was able to be inside of the inner workings of the king's court to know how to move like a king. But Saul, he perceived later on, especially in this battle, who is this? And then he wound up seeing, he was like, oh, interesting. Okay. Go to page 98, and it's going to be the destiny. That's what we're going to read from History of the Jews. The destiny, 98.
Page 98, History of the Jews.
So y'all put the mouse over where it's supposed to be at. It's like a bullet point right there. Yep, the destiny. Go ahead.
The destiny of Saul had begun to be fulfilled.
So the destiny of Saul had begun to be fulfilled. Read.
And David was his chosen instrument.
And David was his chosen, because remember, it said in 1 Samuel chapter 8 that he'll use the men or the children as his own instruments. Go ahead.
The gloom of dejection, which had obscured the soul of the king.
So he started to see himself starting to go down, and David started to rise up. Go ahead.
Since his breach with the prophet became still darker.
So his breach with the prophet, it became still darker, that now his countenance and everything, his spirit started to leave him, it started to change, because he saw himself starting to digress, and David starting to increase. Go ahead.
His ill humor deepened into sadness and melancholy.
So his ill humor, this small family, so on and so forth, his ill humor they usually had, like kings usually have this whatever humor they got. People laugh only because he's the king, but he ain't really funny. So now his ill humor that he had started to digress, and he started to pay attention to David rising in power. And he's looking at him like, this might be the one. Go ahead.
And sometimes paroxysms of wild madness took hold of him.
So now paroxysms of wild madness took hold of him. Hey, let's look that word up. I didn't even think about this, but paroxysms. Paroxysms. I want to see you look it up. Paroxysms. I don't know what that word means. You know, no? You don't know what that word means?
No, sir.
You sure? You're a smart guy. Oh, okay, all right. That's patient. I said paroxysms. All right, let me go. All right, paroxysms. Definition, yeah, there we go. Paroxysm, there we go. Definition. What'd that say?
Paroxysms, a sudden attack or violent expression of a particular emotion or activity.
Dag. So that means this right here, when it's saying his ill humor deepened into sadness and melancholy, that's extreme sadness, And sometimes paroxysm, or mean his sudden violent actions of wild madness, took hold of him. That paroxysm is when he started to attack David with javelins and trying to kill him, seeking to get a hold of him.
Right.
That's what he's saying. Let's go back to the book now. Page 98.
Page 98.
Uh-huh.
An evil spirit hath entered the king.
Uh-huh. So let's highlight where we at. Pull it up. All right, so where we at? Start from his ill humor again.
Yes,
right
sir.
there. Yeah, right there. Go ahead.
His ill humor deepened into sadness and melancholy, and sometimes paroxysms of wild madness took hold of him.
So that's his random violent actions he tried to take hold on him. Go ahead.
An evil spirit hath entered the king.
Right.
His servants whispers to each other.
Hey, what's going on with Saul? What's happening to him? He's starting to be. He's a little different than he was before. Yeah, I don't know, bro. But ever since David killed Goliath, I don't know. Go ahead.
Instrumental music alone was capable of rousing him.
Instrumental music alone was capable. So every little thing started to touch him. Every little thing started to get to him to where he now had to just suddenly outburst. This is y'all got to be mindful of what spirit you in, because notice how he rose up and what showed itself to take him down. I've seen it happen in the truth. Brothers been the leader of a camp for a minute. Then the brother that they raised up wound up being camp leader, and they wound up being a second. They wound up falling out the truth.
Right.
I've seen that happen here. Be mindful. Go ahead. The spirit of power. Go ahead.
His faithful servants, therefore, proposed that a skilled musician and poet should come to the court, and they advised him to select the son of Jesse,
David,
who was handsome, brave, eloquent, and a harpist.
Go ahead.
David came, and his musical talent, as well as his general bearing, delighted the king. Whenever Saul fell in melancholy, David touched the harp, and the king was relieved from his depression.
So he had battled with depression, Saul did. He battled with depression, you depressed brothers and sisters out there. Look at some of the stuff that aided into that depression. All of the stuff that he once had, seeing everybody else succeed while he digressed, right?
Damn.
Being known as something, but then wound up now being known as nothing. Why? Because of what? He was hard-headed. Him being hard-headed aided into that depression. That wound up creating the spirit of depression in him. Saul felt, read on.
Saul felt himself enchained by David.
So he felt himself encompassed and enchained by David. How? Because David surpassed him in might and power and spiritual understanding. Go ahead.
He began to consider him as a son.
He began to consider him as a son.
And at length entreated David's father to leave him permanently at court.
Now listen to this next part. This is important. Watch. This is what we read in 1 Samuel 16. Go ahead.
Saul appointed him his armor bearer,
Read.
thus securing him to himself the cheering influence of his presence.
Read.
This was the first step towards David's rise.
This was the first step towards David's rise. The entering of the king. Through jealousy enters the king. 1 Samuel 18 and 5. I'm going to close it out in a second.
The book of 1 Samuel, chapter 18 and verse 5.
We're going to read to 7.
And David went out whithersoever Saul sent him, and behaved himself wisely.
So David behaved himself wisely. He kept himself from iniquity, like we read in Psalms 18. Go ahead.
And Saul set him over the men of war. And he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants.
Go ahead.
And it came to pass, as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistines,
Go ahead.
that the women came out of all cities of Israel.
So all of the women came out from the cities of Israel. So the women, beautiful, ugly, whatever, they all came out, right? Saul noticed this. He's like, all right, this might be a good day. It might be a celebration. I might be able to get over this. Go ahead.
Singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tabrets, with joy, and with instruments of music.
So they came to meet Saul with tabrets and so on and so forth to dance and whatnot, right? But in their lyrics, there was something he noticed. Watch, read.
The women answered one another as they played and said, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000.
Now, they meant to give honor to Saul, but they noticed what David did, because David, he killed this guy, Goliath, and he got fame from that. But based off of his act, it wound up showing that he had more capability than Saul, and Saul got jealous as hell over that thing. Go to 12. Watch, jump down to verse 12.
Verse 12. And Saul was afraid of David.
So he was afraid of David. That depression took hold of him, and then paroxysms start to come on to him. Go ahead.
Because the Lord was with him. And was departed from Saul.
Departed from Saul. It was finished with him. Go ahead.
Therefore Saul removed him from him.
Read.
And made him his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people.
Meaning he started to know people's names, greet them, so on and so forth. David's rise and fame started to happen after that. Go ahead.
Right. And David himself.
But notice his fame happened because he made sure he was a man of war before he became a man of music. Notice that. He was a man of war known, and then he became a man of music. For you musicians out there. Go ahead.
And David behaved himself wisely in all his ways.
In all his ways. Go ahead.
And the Lord was with him.
Read.
Wherefore, when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely,
Read.
He was afraid of him.
Read.
But all Israel and Judah loved David because he went out and came in before them.
Because he went out and came in before them. So, hey, I'm going to read this last thing, and then I'm gonna close it out, because I'm going to have to do a part 2 to this. Go to page 99. Go to page 99, and start at where it says, this was the better man. It's like a little up. It's like a little up above the second paragraph. You got it? Let's get it.
Page 99.
Come on.
This was the better man, and one of whom God had chosen as king over Israel.
Go ahead.
The rival with whom Samuel had threatened him.
So that's who Samuel had threatened him. When it said in 1 Samuel 13:14, God sought him after a man after his own heart. That who it is, David. Through jealousy enters the king. Go ahead.
Whom he dreaded so greatly.
So he dreaded so greatly. He had paradoxism against this guy. Go ahead.
But who had hereto only appeared to him as a visionary being, was now actually before him in the person of his own favorite and that of his people.
And that of his people. Go ahead.
It was a terrible disillusion for Saul.
So it was a terrible disillusion. He was always troubled in his mind about how David has the power and the spirit to be a better man than he was. Made him jealous. Go ahead.
To me they gave but thousands. And to him 10 of thousands.
And to him 10 of thousands. Go ahead.
They placed him above me.
The people placed him above me. They didn't even know they was doing it, but they placed him above me. And then now this spirit comes upon Saul, but his servants started to whisper one to another, hey, what's going on with this guy? They was like, he's acting different ever since David started. What's happening? Go ahead.
What is yet wanting to make him king? What is yet wanting to make him king?
He said, what is yet lacking is to make him king? What's going on here? Go ahead.
The joyous shouts of the singing and dancing choruses of women ring in the ears from that time.
From that time.
And brought him to mind the words of the prophet. Thou art deserted of God.
Of God. Go ahead.
Saul's love for David now changed to bitter hate, which soon turned to madness.
Which soon turned to madness. So, hey, turn it back to me. So, hey, we're going to have a part 2 on this. All right, through jealousy enters the king. This is part 1 of that, Biblical Game of Thrones. Remember, the link for the playlist is up there so you can just follow along with it. It's going to be like at least 70 episodes, I'm going to be honest.
Yes, sir.
So it's going to be a part 2 to this. There's more reading to do. And I promised some more videos, but we had a lot of reading to get through for the foundation of this. Appreciate y'all for actually tuning into this class. My name is Officer Abraham here, IUIC Raleigh. Shalom. Most High Christ bless you.